Donald Trump just held a disastrous press conference outside of the White House where he announced that he would be putting a 10% baseline tariff on every country, 25% tariffs. The market's currently tanking. You see right here, the after hours S&P just absolutely straight line down right now. Let me show you what went down in this press conference here.
At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart? And that'll be on other countries to help.
Here's the problem. Trump just announced massive tariffs that immediately crashed the markets. Here's the even bigger problem. Experts are comparing these tariffs to the ones that helped cause the Great Depression. But don't worry, I've got solutions for surviving Trump's economic time bomb. Like learning to enjoy ramen noodles as your new luxury food and practicing saying, "Would you like fries with that?" in multiple languages for your new international career opportunities. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. So Trump decided that launching a trade war with just one country wasn't ambitious enough. Nope, this time Orange Supreme went full supervillain and declared economic warfare on the entire planet. Because nothing says stable genius like picking fights with literally everyone who sells us stuff. Let's break down this economic disaster in the making.
Trump brings out a chart to describe his tariffs. Here, play this clip.
Big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. So it's 67%. So we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset?
Trump held what might be the most financially catastrophic press conference in White House history, standing outside on the lawn like he was about to announce a yard sale, except instead of selling old junk, he was selling America's economic future down the river. The former president kicked things off with what he called a minimum baseline tariff of 10% on everything imported from everywhere, every country, every product. Think about that for a second. That means your bananas from Central America, 10% more expensive. Your IKEA furniture, add 10%. Your prescription medications, that's right, tack on another 10%. But wait, there's more. Like some deranged game show host, Trump was just getting warmed up with his, "but that's not all, folks," economic package. The real showstopper came when he announced a massive 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles. 25%. Do you have any idea what that would do to car prices?
We're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. Now we have almost none of it, except the biggest company is coming in. We're going to end up with almost 40%. Lee Zeldin's working to get their approvals. And it's an amazing company, Mr. Way.
Even American-made cars use tons of imported parts, so virtually every vehicle would suddenly get way more expensive. And this isn't just hitting luxury vehicles. We're talking about regular cars that regular people need to get to their regular jobs. But the tariff train didn't stop there. Trump busted out some charts that looked like they were made by a third grader who just discovered PowerPoint. He proudly displayed his special customized tariff rates for different countries, like he was handing out personalized punishments. Europe gets a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34% because according to Trump, they rip us off. Vietnam, they're getting slapped with a 46% tariff because, as Trump explained, they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46%. How generous. And poor Taiwan, which Trump accused of stealing all of our computer chips and semiconductors, gets hit with a 40% tariff. Apparently, Trump missed the memo that Taiwan is one of our closest allies in containing China and a crucial partner in the actual semiconductor industry. But hey, details schmeetails, right? This tariff tantrum goes way beyond anything he tried during his first term. Back then, his trade war was primarily focused on China. Now he's basically taken out his economic shotgun and is firing in all directions. It's like watching someone go from targeted drone strikes to carpet bombing the entire neighborhood.
25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
Happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles. But likewise, an old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I used it on the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it.
Now inflation is surging and our markets are crashing, and inflation is going to get way worse after what you just did here.
Trump justified this economic kamikaze mission by claiming these tariffs will rebuild our economy and prevent other countries from cheating. Because nothing rebuilds an economy quite like making everything more expensive and starting global trade wars. It's like trying to lose weight by eating more cake. It's exactly the opposite of what would actually work. Economists immediately called bull on Trump's explanation. They pointed out that tariffs don't magically create domestic manufacturing. They just raise prices on consumers. And the idea that all our trading partners are cheating is about as accurate as claiming the earth is flat. International trade isn't some rigged casino game. It's complex networks of supply chains that have developed over decades. The market reaction was swift and exactly what you'd expect when someone threatens to blow up the global trading system. S&P futures took a nosedive in after-hours trading, with investors basically saying, "Oh, hell no," to Trump's economic plan. Here's the real payoff of Trump's tariff temper tantrum. Virtually everything you buy is about to get more expensive. We're talking about price increases of at least 10 to 25% on everything from food to furniture, clothes to computers. Your grocery bill? Higher. Your new phone? Pricier. That washing machine you've been saving for? Add another couple $100. At a time when people are already struggling with inflation, Trump just announced a plan that would throw gasoline on that fire. And the worst part is that these price increases wouldn't even accomplish anything positive. They won't bring back manufacturing jobs, they won't reduce the trade deficit, and they certainly won't rebuild the economy. All they'll do is take money out of your pocket and create global economic chaos.
More promises broken, but even worse than promises broken, you have broken an incredible economy that was handed to you, where now we see the Atlanta Federal Reserve and others. In 1913, for reasons unknown, we moved away from tariffs. Here, play this clip.
Then in 1913, for reasons unknown to mankind, they established the income tax so that citizens, rather than foreign countries, would start paying. And it would have never happened if they had stayed with the tariff policy. It would have been a much different story. They tried to bring back tariffs to save our country.
That global economic chaos didn't just materialize out of thin air. World leaders jumped on their phones faster than teenagers posting about celebrity drama, except instead of sending heart emojis, they were firing off angry press releases. The international reaction gave new meaning to the phrase breaking news, because Trump literally broke the global economy in under 24 hours. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen wasn't mincing words when she warned these tariffs would have immense consequences. That's diplomatic speak for, "We're super mad and you're going to regret this." China, already no stranger to Trump's trade tantrums, promised to take resolute countermeasures to protect its interests. When China makes threats like that, they don't just mean they'll write a strongly worded letter, they mean business. But the anger didn't stop there. France's President Macron called the tariffs a brutal and unfounded decision, with a massive impact on Europe's economy. Japan described its whopping 24% levy as extremely regrettable, which in super polite Japanese diplomatic language basically translates to, "We're absolutely furious." South Korea's acting president Han Duck-soo didn't bother with coded language, bluntly declaring that a global trade war has become a reality. That's like your doctor skipping past, "You might want to consider some lifestyle changes," and going straight to "Start planning your funeral." The really scary part? These countries aren't just complaining, they're actively plotting revenge. The EU won't stand idly by, according to Trade Chief Maros Sefcovic, which means Europe is preparing to hit American products with their own tariffs if negotiations fail. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney vowed to fight these tariffs with countermeasures, even though they weren't initially targeted. France and Germany have even floated the idea of slapping taxes on US tech companies. So now Apple, Google, and Amazon might pay the price for Trump's economic temper tantrum. Think about what this means. Trump managed to anger not just our rivals, but our closest allies, the very countries we need on our side to counterbalance China's growing influence. Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan are crucial partners in keeping China in check across Asia. But instead of strengthening those relationships, Trump decided to hit them with economic penalties that make them question whether America is still a reliable friend. It's like deliberately picking fights with all your buddies right before you need their help moving your heavy furniture. Wall Street immediately understood the danger, which is why investment bank JP Morgan dramatically changed its economic forecast. They now see a 60% chance of the global economy falling into recession by year's end, up from their previous estimate of 40%. When the smart money people suddenly up their recession prediction by 20 percentage points overnight, it's time to worry. That's not a small adjustment. That's like your weather app going from partly cloudy to seek shelter immediately. What makes these tariffs fundamentally different from Trump's previous trade actions is both their scope and their targets. His first-term tariffs primarily focused on China, which at least had some strategic logic behind it. But these new tariffs hit virtually everyone at once: friends, enemies, and everyone in between. It's the economic equivalent of setting off a bomb in a crowded room and expecting only your enemies to get hurt. The damage would ripple through every aspect of the economy. Think about it. If everything imported into America suddenly costs 10 to 25% more, that hits literally every sector: food, electronics, clothing, cars, medicine, industrial parts. Prices would spike across the board. American companies that rely on global supply chains would see their costs explode overnight. And consumers? We'd be paying significantly more for almost everything we buy. The timing couldn't be worse either. Just as inflation was finally cooling down, Trump's tariff tsunami would send prices shooting back up again. The Federal Reserve would likely have to raise interest rates even higher to combat this artificial inflation, making mortgages, car loans, and credit card debt even more expensive. It's a perfect storm of economic pain, and completely self-inflicted. What's particularly baffling is that economists across the political spectrum agree these tariffs would hurt America more than help it. When's the last time you saw conservative and liberal economists agreeing on anything? It's like getting cats and dogs to sign a peace treaty, practically unheard of. Yet here we are, with virtually every economic expert warning that these tariffs are a terrible idea. You know those history lessons about the Great Depression that made you yawn in high school? Well, turns out they weren't just boring stories. They were warnings, and Trump is ignoring them like a kid with his fingers in his ears going, "La la la, can't hear you." The historical red flags aren't just waving, they're practically smacking us in the face. The Center for Strategic and International Studies didn't pull any punches when they called Trump's plan the most sweeping tariff hike since the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, the 1930 law best remembered for triggering a global trade war and deepening the Great Depression. That's not just a casual comparison, that's economic PTSD from nearly a century ago coming back to haunt us. For those who skipped history class or were too busy passing notes, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs were basically America's economic suicide note. Congress thought slapping huge taxes on imports would protect American workers. Instead, it triggered a global trade war that helped transform a bad recession into the worst economic collapse in modern history. People were literally selling apples on street corners and living in shanty towns called Hoovervilles. Not exactly the greatness Trump keeps promising. But here's the truly terrifying part. Oxford Economics says Trump's tariff scheme will push America's average tariff rate to 24%. That's not just similar to the Great Depression era, it's actually higher than those 1930s levels. It's like Trump saw one of the worst economic decisions in American history and thought, hold my Diet Coke, I can do worse. The Smoot-Hawley disaster didn't just hurt America. It collapsed international trade by over 60%. That's not a typo. Global commerce literally fell off a cliff because countries kept retaliating with their own tariffs until nobody was trading with anybody. Now imagine that happening to our modern hyper-connected economy, where even your toaster probably has parts from 6 different countries. What makes economic experts break out in cold sweats at night is how these tariffs will ripple through every aspect of our economy. Supply chains that took decades to build will shatter overnight. Companies that rely on global parts will see their costs explode. And guess who gets to pay for all this? That's right, you, me, and everyone else standing in the checkout line wondering why toilet paper suddenly costs as much as steak. The warnings from global financial leaders sound like dialogue from a disaster movie. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva didn't mince words when she called these tariffs a significant risk to the global outlook at a time of sluggish growth. Translation: Trump is pouring gasoline on an already smoldering economic fireplace. Reuters reports that the ripple effects have already begun. Automaker Stellantis is temporarily laying off U.S. workers and closing plants in Canada and Mexico. While General Motors said it would increase U.S. production, the overall picture looks more like musical chairs with jobs. Some positions appear while others vanish, but the music is getting scarier and faster. What does this mean for regular folks who don't have economics degrees? Imagine walking into a store where everything costs at least 10% more, but your paycheck hasn't changed. Now imagine your company can't afford to keep everyone because their costs just skyrocketed. And then imagine your retirement account tanking because the stock market is having a nervous breakdown. That's the triple crown of economic pain waiting for us. Investment banks didn't wait to see the train wreck in slow motion. They immediately downgraded economic forecasts. Why? Because history and math don't lie. When you suddenly jack up prices on virtually everything entering your country, you guarantee 3 things: inflation that eats away at people's buying power, job losses as companies scramble to cut costs, and the growing shadow of recession as consumers and businesses alike pull back on spending. The truly maddening part is that we've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. Economic historians have studied the Great Depression for nearly a century. The lesson is crystal clear. Broad tariffs that trigger trade wars are economic poison. Yet here we are with Trump playing economic Russian roulette with 5 bullets in a 6-chamber gun. Companies that were planning expansions are now hitting pause. Retailers who were already struggling with inflation are staring at their spreadsheets in horror. And countries that were once our closest trading partners are drafting their revenge tariffs aimed squarely at American products. So there you have it, folks. Trump's tariff disaster isn't just some distant political problem. It's coming directly for your wallet. Economists are now warning these tariffs could cost the average American family thousands of dollars every year. That's not pocket change. That's mortgage payments, tuition bills, and groceries. While Donnie Deals brags about fixing the economy, he's actually setting your money on fire. Maybe we should all start practicing budget-friendly hobbies like extreme coupon clipping or dumpster diving for beginners. Remember, nothing says winning like paying thousands more for the same stuff you buy today.